The new kid. So, I grew up in a rather small town in East Europe. Really nothing special. There were maybe about 100 people living there at the time. Not much was going on there, except for the usual hanging out with friends and drinking stuff. The cool thing about it though was that my house was built next to the woods, so there was always something to explore. A little bit down the road there was a very old mansion. It really looked like straight out of a horror movie. We always called it the ghost house. Despite the town being so small, we actually had a school there, but because of the lack of children, we only had 2 classes. All in all, it were about 15 students. As I said before, it was a small town. So when one day this new kid came to our school, of course everybody knew about it immediately. His name was John. He was a rather small and shy boy. He was 16, the same age as me, but he definitely looked younger. I thought it was a bit weird that somebody would move here with their children, but he told me that his father was a writer and that they would often move to different places, so I didn't ask further questions. After a while, we became friends. He told me stories about all the different places he went to. When I asked him where he was living, I was surprised to find out that his house was in my street. Wait a minute, I thought to myself. That's the ghost house. Of course I didn't tell him that. It would have been a bit rude and I just met him, so I didn't want to scare him away. After school, we went home together. When we arrived at my house, I asked him if he wanted to come in and meet my parents, but he said that his dad told him to come home as soon as school's over and that he would get mad if he came too late. So I got inside and he went home. When I saw my dad, I immediately told him about our new neighbors. That's odd, he said. What do you mean? Well, it's just that I haven't seen anybody moving in there. Don't you think that if they came here by car, that we must have seen them? After all, it's a one-way street. Well, maybe they moved in overnight. I guess that could be, but it's still a bit odd though. The next day, my parents and I went to the ghost house to welcome our new neighbors.
It's funny, I always thought that the house was condemned as uninhabitable,
my mom said. My dad didn't say anything, he just gave her a very funny look. When we knocked at the door, John's father opened it. He wasn't a tall man. Like father, like son, I thought.
Hey, we are your new neighbors,
my mom said. He introduced himself as Arthur Connor and thanked us for coming over, but then told us that he had still a lot of work to do and sent us away. That was kind of rude, I thought to myself. As I turned around, I saw my father's face. It was pale as death. Are you alright, Dad? I asked. Yeah, sure. Why shouldn't I be alright? All of a sudden, he was very hectic and kind of aggressive, so I decided to not bother him anymore. When we got home, my dad grabbed his phone and went outside. He was behaving really weird. That night, I woke up because I heard noises coming from downstairs. When I snuck down the stairs to see what was going on, I saw my dad standing in the doorway talking to a man that I had never seen before. He surely wasn't a local. I couldn't see his face because he was wearing an old man's hat and a trench coat. I had a feeling that something was very wrong here. They went outside and my dad closed the door. I snuck to the window to see what they were doing. I saw my dad grabbing a shovel and then they both went into the woods. In that moment I got chills. Why was he going into the woods? Why the shovel? And who the hell was that man? I decided to follow them. Luckily, I knew my way through the woods very well, so it was easy for me to follow them without them seeing me. As we went deeper and deeper into the woods, I began to ask myself if I was ready to see what they were clearly trying to hide from me and my mom. Suddenly they stopped. There was nothing special there, just some rocks lying on the ground. It must be here, I heard my dad say. He started to dig, and at this moment a horrible thought came into my mind. It couldn't be, I thought. Please, just let this be a dream. He digged deeper and deeper. No, no, no. It cannot be. This is not possible. He's gone. I heard my dad yell. I suddenly realized that it had become really quiet. Too quiet. We were in the middle of the woods, and you usually always hear noises, but I could hear nothing at all, like somebody pressed the mute button on the TV. And that's when I saw it, behind my dad's back. It was a small, human-like creature. It was moving towards them, and when it was about 3 meters behind them, I could see its face. It was John's dad. At least his face looked like him, and if he would have been standing upright, maybe the height would be the same too. But it wasn't standing upright. It was scoping like some kind of monkey. Then I realized that whatever this thing was, it surely had nothing good in mind. So I tried to scream and warn my dad, but then I realized that my voice was gone and I could hear nothing at all. My dad didn't hear me as well. Suddenly the man who was standing opposite my dad was seeing the creature. He grabbed my dad's arm and tried to run away, but the creature had already ripped my dad's back open. Then the man ran towards me. He saw me, and when he grabbed my arm, I could suddenly hear again. "Run!" he yelled. We ran back the way we came. I couldn't see if the creature was following us or not. As we reached the road, we stopped. He turned towards me. It was then that I saw that he was carrying a cross around his neck. He grabbed into his pocket, pulled out a notepad and gave it to me. "This will explain everything. Get back inside," he said, and then he ran back into the woods. On the first page on the notepad it said, "Preacher by Father Marin." Then I saw our address and my dad's name. It was something about a dead boy who used to live in this town. Then I saw that there was a picture of the boy. The boy on the picture looked exactly like John. At that moment, I thought for sure that I was losing my mind, or that this was some kind of sick prank, but it wasn't. After that night, I never saw my dad, the priest, John, or his dad ever again. No corpses were found, and when I told the police about John and his dad, they told me that there was nobody living in the house and that house was condemned as uninhabitable. A few weeks later, the police called. They said that they had identified the boy on the picture as Arthur Connor, a boy who lived in the house down the street about 25 years ago, and then suddenly disappeared overnight. I never told anybody about the creature that I saw that night. I don't even know if it was real, but to this day, the memories of that night still haunt me in my dreams.